Hey guys, welcome to Equine Sewing. I talked about in the past about making a saddle slip cover, just something that I can just throw over really quickly and keep the dust and the mold off. I wanted it to be a little simple slip cover. So what I have here, this is a canvas material. This was actually gifted to me in a very large piece of canvas. So what I have done here is it actually folds over to the other side as well. This is a full piece, so it measured out to be 3 yards. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you get 3 yards of fabric, and this right here is actually going to be my template. And I actually break this down, this fabric, so I'm going to cut this in half right here, and then we'll break it into another piece here for the stirrups. And then I'm actually going to cut out a hole up at the top here, and then I'll sew on my top for the horn. Take this in half, and then I'll have another piece coming down that will cover up the stirrup. My plan is to make sure that it attaches to the stirrup here to keep it connected so that it's not flapping. And my saddle, now I am going to make sure that I leave enough for the seam allowance. So I know that I want to go a little past my saddle here. So I'm going to come down here just a little bit as to where my stirrup is going to start, is what I want to do. And I want to come down just a little bit of ways, because when I cut this and I fold this back, it's going to actually bring it up another inch. So I'm going to give myself a nice seam allowance. So I'm going to cut starting right here and put my fabric marker in. A nice seam allowance here, and I know I want that right there. So we'll go ahead and take that to the cutting table, and we'll cut that in half. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and lay this back over on the saddle, and I'm going to line that side up that I just cut on the other side of the stirrup as to where I wanted it to be. And then I will go ahead and measure the other side. Get this flip around this way. And I will mark it. And that is with seam allowance as well. So we wanted it just to be just about there, and then seam allowance when we sew it, this will be folded under this way, and it will land right about there. So I think that should look pretty nice. Okay, so I have it as to where I want that. So now let's go ahead and deal with the horn area. So I have it here, and I'm going to go ahead and X mark this spot, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut a little slit, and we're going to make a hole around here. So after we mark our spot with an X, we're going to kind of follow it down just a little bit. We only want to go the length of the horn, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take my fabric marker. I'm going to make a line down that way. And I'm going to actually make a cross. So I'm going to do this one here, and then I'm going to do this one, and then I will come in front and then do the same thing there. So I have that one there, and I'm going to come across at the top, mark that down. And I'm just measuring right where that horn stops. I don't want to go into my palm apart. So there we stop. And then let's do the front. So then that kind of leaves me with that cross area that I've kind of that I've marked out for me to cut out. So then it kind of gives me my center point too of where I will be starting. Okay, so now that we have our marks marked out there, now you kind of know that you actually have, there's the center part on here by using the horn area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my slits. So I'm going to kind of cut these little triangles off and around, because what we want to do is sew a piece that's going to go on top of this. So we definitely are going to want something round, or you can shape it to the same as the horn. So that's covered up too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure right here. I'm going to start right here, down here at the end of the horn where we started cutting from. And I'm going to give it just, I'm going to go just past that a little bit. So I'm going to add like 1/2 inch to that. So I'm going to put it right at 1 inch. So I've added 1 inch right here. And then I'm going to come up and around and then come down to the front of the saddle. And give yourself a little bit of slack. You don't want to pull it too tight. Because you got to also give yourself some seam allowance in there. So I have mine at 11, and I'm going to give it another 1/2 inch. So I'm going to say 11.5. So I'm going to half is about right where I want to go. All the way around for this. Which I don't need that. Don't need 11.5 on that side. And I'm going to say, you don't want it too snug, right? Give myself a 1/2 inch, or give myself an inch on this side as well. Another inch on that side, so give some slack. So I'm going to say 9.5. So I had 11.5. Myself 11.5 there, and then 8.5 this way. Just remember to make sure you give yourself some slack when you're measuring, and then add the 1/2 inch to give the seam allowance. Okay guys, so I've got my piece that I'm going to put on my horn here, and it's just a long enough piece so that I can come out a little ways. I know this is going to be too big, so I've just pinned it. And when you're pinning it, just kind of pin it accordingly. Run your pins long ways the way you would be stitching versus then straight up and down. This, if you're new to sewing, this is going to be easier because you're going to be able to see that your pins are running straight, because that's where you're going to sew. So I would just say run your pins in the way that you're going to sew. And I'm going to actually cut this back just a little bit because this is a little bit still too long. As you can see, if I put it down to where it's actually going to be pinned, it's pretty big right there. So I've got enough here to where when I go to sew this down, I will be sewing it right here. So you can see how it's kind of long, and then I'm going to be sewing this down right here. So I still have got probably, well, let's see, let me measure that. More than enough. So I'm actually going to go cut this back a whole inch because I don't need that much on there, because I still have a 1/2 inch, another inch that I can actually sew on there, and then it leaves me some extra fabric that I can cut back after I've sewn it down. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and we'll see what happens. Give it a little bit cut here. Get that pin out because I know I'm going to be cutting up there. Make this even. I'm just going to do it right here. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Let's go ahead and take that off, and we're going to go ahead and sew straight across this way and down. Don't sew the bottom up because that's the piece that's going to be sewed on to this part. And I'm actually going to do about a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Okay, now don't worry about folding that inside out just quite yet, because when we sew this, we will be sewing with it being inside out, the wrong side outside. That makes sense. So after you sew it, then you will flip it right side out. So in this case, if you're using a canvas, there is no right side or wrong side. Wherever we have pinned, that's become our wrong side. So go ahead, like I said, and leave that in, and then go ahead and place it back over your horn like so. And then let's go ahead and pin that back down. Okay guys, now that we had that sewn up and we pinned it back into place, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of shape it a little bit. We've got these two corners here. We'll just kind of clean it up a little bit. I'm just going to pull the seams side by side, and it's going to kind of like fold down one way or the other. And I'm just going to, it doesn't matter which way you fold the seam down. You can go left or right, whichever your fabric prefers to go. I'm just going to kind of let it naturally go in the direction it wants to go. And I'm just going to kind of feel a little bit as to where the tip of my horn, top of my horn here is, and I'm gonna fold it backward, and I'm gonna pin that into place, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try to do the back side here that way as well. I'm gonna pin that. There we go. And this piece is actually wanting to go that way, so that's okay. This way it's wanting to naturally fold down. So it is quite a bit that we got right there, and that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and leave it because what I'm going to go ahead and do, I will sew across there and then cut it. And we'll get you a closer look so that you can see what I'm actually talking about. So I've taken that piece and I've pulled it out each side, and then the extra fabric, I just let it fold over which way it wanted to go, and it went in the opposite direction of this one, which is good because you want the seam to actually lay more flat. So I just pinned it where I'm actually going to sew across, and then we'll cut this off, and then this one, I don't think I'm going to cut that off. I think I'm just going to sew right there across, and then I might have a little tiny piece that I can cut off, but I might not even bother. So go ahead and grab some fabric. Grab a piece that's big enough that you think is going to work as far as going all the way down to your stirrup, and it could be all the way down. You can go past this if you choose, completely up to however you decide to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and take this piece that I have here, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and measure that and let you know what this size is here. Now I didn't cut this piece out. This was just a piece that I had just laying about. So this piece I have here is 26.5 inches, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and go with that. That works for me, because what I'm going to go ahead and do, I am going to actually fold it over just a little bit, and then eventually what will happen is it'll get sewed up in here like so. So I'm going to go ahead and just pin this really quick so you guys can kind of get a visual of what this is going to look like. And again, just keep in mind, you know, I would go ahead and start out with just a template, especially if you are planning on getting some really nice fabric. Say if you're making it for a birthday gift, Christmas, or if you're wanting to sell them. You'll want to have a nice little template to kind of go off of. So I think that actually works for me. Now underneath there where that is sitting, that was 26.5 inches. I could actually bring that down because I still have not much. I still have like an inch behind there that I can fold over, and then an inch, just I have a couple inches I have a couple inches there that I can actually work with, which is going to be really nice, because I'll fold this over and I'll fold this over and I'll make it look really clean and very nice. Okay, so now that we have our piece at the desired length that we want, let's go ahead and take that off, and then we're going to shape the sides. And you can do this in any way you want it. You can keep it square if you prefer. Go ahead and do just a little bit more to it, and I'm gonna take it off, and I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and fold it in half as best as I can, and then I will round my sides with this fabric being folded together. And I will round my corners somewhat, and then when I cut it, the pieces should mirror image each other. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to use this candle lid here to make my round. So I kind of want my corners here to be round instead of square. Go ahead and clip accordingly to however much seam allowance you want. Okay, so grab your pieces for the stirrups area, and mine here actually measure. So my piece that I'm using here is 26.5 by 13. So, I mean, you can use that if you want to. Just, I would say make sure that you measure the side where you want to place it, and then down, and then you can kind of go off your length right there. So I am going to go ahead and cut both pieces. Okay, so you can choose to either use Velcro or elastic. In this case, just because I am using this as a template, I'm going to go ahead and use elastic. And the elastic, I'm actually going to sew it to the bottom down here. And what that is going to be for is the stirrup will slide just inside of the elastic and keep it, keep the cover close to the saddle there. Okay, so real quick, I want to show you how I'm actually getting the size of my elastic here. So because I want my fabric to stay close and kind of clinging to my saddle, I'm going to take my elastic that I have, and this is just something I had laying around the house. It does not have to be this size. Make it bigger, whatever. I am just going to go ahead and measure my, going to place it from one side to the other, like so. And I'm actually going to come in just a little bit, and I'll put my thumbs on either side like this, and then that's the width that I want to get. Place it on here, and I go to sew it. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit, and then I'm going to stretch my elastic to here, so then when it's sewn on, it's, oops, So then when it's sewed on, what's going to happen is the fabric is going to bunch like this. And it's kind of what I'm going for. Now you don't have to, you could do a little less or a little more, whichever you like. But I'm going to do that, and that way it actually stays around the stirrup. And I'm going to do a 1/4 inch here. And this is going to be my top part here. Now for the other side. So we've done the top and one of the sides. We're going to skip the bottom half for just for a second, and we're going to do the other side, and we're going to fold that over a 1/4 inch and sew down the Okay, so I'm going to fold this over, giving it enough room to feed my elastic through there. And I know that I gave it plenty of room when I held this up to the side of my saddle. If it's not, that's okay. This is a prototype, so you'll know to adjust what you need to adjust the next time when you make one. So I think I have mine right about where it needs to be. This is my elastic piece, and I have plenty of room to actually feed it through there so it will bunch up nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that down.
And I'm going to start out forward and then back, forward and back. And then sew the rest of the way down. Alright, coming to the end here, forward and back.
And the best thing that works really good here is if you have a safety pin, and then you can actually feed it through. So go ahead and grab a safety pin, and then you can feed that through. Pin. And I'm going to feed that through. I'm actually going to poke that down there a little past that top so it doesn't make it fray here. We don't want that to come unraveled. Alright. Doesn't matter which side you start on. Now the trick here is to make sure that once it comes to the end, you kind of hold it there. You don't want it to come out. Just get to a little bit there where it will snag it and sew it in. You can kind of see that where it's still right there. It's right there on that seam allowance. You can see that. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that down. And go forward and back a couple times, making sure you're snagging that corner. Cut the ends. And go ahead and finish feeding your safety pin through, pulling the fabric down, and you'll notice it's starting to bunch. And that's okay. Now you can do this accordingly to how much bunching that you want done on that. I know it kind of looks like a curtain. If you plan on making curtains or whatever, hey, there you go. It's a good little tip for it. So just as you're kind of pulling through, you'll notice though the elastic will want to, it's wanting to turn and twist on you. So depending on the width of your elastic, you might have a little bit of a problem there, but I think once it's on, if it twists in there, it's not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully take my safety pin off, and doing that, I'm actually going to put a pin in place so that my elastic doesn't go bouncing back, and then I have a hard time getting it to come back through. And then go ahead and sew that in place. and hold that down really, really well, or your elastic will go through. Maybe put your pin a little further back so you don't have to worry about it bouncing back or sewing over the needle, because you do not want to do that. So, and then you're going to want to sew back and forth a couple times, holding it in place. Forward and back. One more time, forward and cut. All right, so this is what we got. There we go. Looks just like that. And the other one you're going to do the same thing with. And if you need to remember which one is the top and bottom, I would go ahead and mark bottom. Bottom has the elastic, and for the top there's no elastic. And again, maybe just mark top and bottom if you want to. So go ahead and grab the other side and get it ready. Okay guys, so I have two of these. I have both of them done. And how this is going to work is this is going to be where the stirrup is at. So we are going to determine where we want our other elastic to go, because we'll sew this one on and then we'll measure and see where we want that elastic piece to land behind here, and that elastic piece is going to hold this piece of fabric in towards the stirrup. That's the goal. So we know that needs to go there, right? And that looks about right to me. So we'll just pin it in place. Now you could do this either or way. You could sew it to the front just like that, or you can put it behind there, and in which I'm going to put it behind there. So, but right now we want to take our elastic and see where we want it to go so that it holds this part to the stirrup. And so I'm thinking we want something like that, right? So thinking right here. I think that's where I want mine to go. Now, a cool little thing I was just kind of thinking was you could actually make some little pockets, right? So you can make a pocket behind this so that it just sits right down inside there, and then it stays, and then the elastic you can put in there. So it's almost too late to do that now because I have the elastic down there, but I think for my not prototype one, I think we'll do just that. I think we'll add a little pocket on the other side to set the stirrup down inside, and then bring the elastic up a little bit higher. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this behind, probably right here. And of course it would be behind here, but it would be that area. I think that looks about right, so that it holds it. So we will go ahead, place our other little pieces where we want them to be, and I'm going to go ahead and mark this where I want it, and then I'll sew it down. Okay, so we're going to sew on this elastic, and I went ahead and marked it where I wanted it to go. Now this is falling right where those stirrup buckles go. It's just above the top of the stirrup where this elastic is landing. So I think it's a good place, and we'll see. If it's not, then we can always change it. But how we're going to add these is just across this way. We're going to sew one side down and then the other side down. you could actually have maybe a little pocket sewn up here, and then when you take your SMB boots off, bell boots, you have this little pocket you can just slip those right into and keep them handy right there with your saddle. So okay, I have that one, and this is what it looks like. And we'll go ahead and do the other one. Grab the whole piece of it, the whole cover. So leave it wrong side out, and then as you're folding over your side pieces, you can actually do this a couple different ways and you can make it look really nice. Again, this is a prototype, so don't forget that. So you can always tweak it, make it look really, really nice when you're done. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm actually just gonna fold it over once, like that, which is about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, however much you want to give. And then you can also even fold it over again and then do a top stitch on that, and that would actually look really nice when you go to do the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and let's sew around all the way around. My suggestion would be to go ahead and pin it or clip it if you've never done it before. If you are pretty confident and you don't mind if it's a little off, go ahead and go for it. I am usually one that just goes for it. So I'm going to go ahead and eyeball this and sew all the way around. And I'm actually going to start back here, just past a round spot, just like that. And I'm going to start sewing there and sew all the way around. Okay, just coming down and around. So just take your time if you want that round. Going to look like when you flip that around and it's the right side out now. So we have the little horn part that we need to sew on, and we'll do that, and then we'll also sew on the leg straps area. So I think I'm going to do the leg straps area first. I'll put this back on there and I'll pin it where it needs to go. I'll pin both of those on there and then we'll sew those on. Okay guys, so we just have one more side to actually pin on. I already have that side on there. Just make sure when you are placing these on there, make sure that you have the wrong side facing towards you. This is the correct side, which is your finished side, and then this is the wrong side. So you want the wrong side facing you. And then we will sew these down. So we're going to sew up at the top here where we have pinned this, and forward and backward. And to make it look kind of nice, you could do, like I said, a top stitch once it's done. Once you make your final one. prototypes really don't matter. They do, but then they don't, right? Not as much. It's more to see how they fit and how they look, if you like the design or not. So then that leaves you kind of with this little lip here, and that's what I'm talking about when you do your top stitch. And it'll actually look pretty nice because it'll give you a finished look if you go ahead and you can sew that like right in the same spot. Let's just go ahead and do it. So I'm gonna, once I come to the end here, I'm gonna leave my needle down in the position and just turn and come back up, and I'm actually making a square. It's just really gonna give it a nice finished look. And then we'll go ahead and turn it and do it here. We want it to be matching, right, on both sides. Let's cut these little strings off so they don't get stuck in the machine. It's actually kind of hard to see on this fabric here. I hope you guys can see that. But it gives it a finished look to it. It looks pretty nice. All right, so I'm gonna flip this over and we are gonna sew down the other side. Okay, pretty much the last step that we're gonna do here is adding on the cover for the horn. So we had that pinned down in place like so. And what we're gonna do now with that is we're going to leave it pinned, but then we're gonna unpin it as we're going around. So, and what I mean by that is we're gonna bring both pieces together, both raw edges together like this, and then we'll pin it. And you can use the same pin that's right there in place. It's gonna help you by doing that. It's kind of like staying together right now for you. So just go ahead and unpin it where you have it like this, and you're gonna put raw edges together like so, like that. And you're gonna just keep doing that all the way around. And then we're going to sew this all the way around. And then we'll do the tips of the here. So that is what we got. Now you can kind of see how that looks now. So if it looks like that, that is correct. So we're going to sew that all the way around. And to make it easier, I'm going to actually go ahead and sew the tips parts of these first. And once we sew this down, then we can clip this off. Now you can do it again if you find that there's still too much material there. So I'm actually going to come down one more. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew that now, just so it doesn't try to come out again on me. And then you can cut that off. You won't want to cut too far back because you don't want to cut into your stitches, but you want to remove some of the bulk. So if you remember, we folded that back and then we cut those. You can always push those out just a little bit if you want. Like that. That way it sits more flush to the horn. it fits really good. Really, really good. Now I know it's not real perfectly tight right here on the front. Let's try this out and see how this works. Remember our elastic we put back there. I'm gonna go ahead and leave my bell boots on. See if I can do this without knocking my saddle off. Oh, look at that, guys. That worked out really good. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. And it landed right where we want to go. Right there. Maybe make this elastic a little bit bigger, not so tight. Right? So it kind of like I said, extra, right? There's a little extra there, but that's okay. And we got some round out of that I was actually going for. The top fits on there really good. All right, yeah, so that goes on pretty good. That's not so bad. And then you just kind of straighten it up to where you want it to be. Like that. Looks pretty good. All right. And then if you guys change things up to however you're customizing it, making it to the way you want it to be, that would be so cool. Putting your horsey's name on there. So anyways, I hope you guys are liking the tutorials. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think. And let us know if you guys have any more ideas. I had a couple people that let me know that they had some ideas. So just keep them coming, and hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.